absolutely delightful to be on this Zoom presentation. Once upon a time, you would probably find me or the master or various glass sellers doing their best to come and make a mess in your school at assembly or something of that kind. And we go through this very old-fashioned process because, as you were saying, how the charity, well, you have had to change the way you operate in school courtesy of COVID. Of course, this has been forced upon us as a charity to try and figure out, well, you know, you can't give cheques at assemblies at the moment and probably for the foreseeable future. And so how are we going to operate? And so this modern technology for a 17th century organisation struggling to sometimes get into the 20th century, Zoom is a bit of a revelation, but here we are. Of course, these days, I always used to do sort of question and answer sessions with the children at assembly and that sort of thing, telling them about what the company did and how it did it. And then we present this old-fashioned thing called a check, and it was quite novel as to whether, I think usually got the answer it was a check, but you know, but we've given up on that as well now, of course, we're using obviously automatic bank transfers. So there have been many challenges for us to try and figure out how we can best engage with our schools. But ironically, and again, as has already been mentioned, I think COVID's challenged us, but has given us huge opportunities. And in fact, Paul has been instrumental in the Worshipful Company of Glass Sellers having their own YouTube channel, can you believe? I mean, how high tech is that? I mean, for us, this is mind-boggling. We have, is it over 40 now, Paul? Yeah, over 40 videos, not just from schools, I hasten to add, but talking about what the company does, various events, all that sort of thing, and what the charity fund specifically does as well. But of course, it allows us to engage with our schools, who we're very happy and delighted to do, and hopefully it gives them the opportunity to engage with us and use this device, I suppose, to report back, explain what's going on, and really, I suppose, get the children involved, which is really important that we find, because, and again, most people I think online here know I am entirely shameless in asking our membership for more funds, because without our members, there would be no charity fund. And so it's hugely important that you can, in time, feed back to us and hopefully have some fun making a video presentation of what you've done and how you've done it. So I think that's it. Delighted to see you today, and please, from your side, we'd love to hear about your school.
Thank you very much, and obviously on behalf of all of my school, we want to say an enormous thank you for giving us this privilege to be able to be here to share what we do, but also an enormous thank you for the fact that you're going to allow us to enhance our curriculum and give our youngsters some experiences that they perhaps wouldn't have been able to have. We're going to do it as a sort of a three-part thing. I'm just going to do a really quick overview. I suppose I've told you a teeny bit about the school already, yes. But I want to show you, just talk to you about the school a little. And also we have just a few of our youngsters
not before 4
to have a conversation, and just so they're going to show you something. Then my deputy, who has been inspirational in making sure that we have rewritten our curriculum. It's bespoke for our children. We've identified the sort of learners we have, and I think you'll find that really interesting to see how we are having to move into the 21st century with our ideas to meet the needs of the challenges that our children face. And then I'm going to hand over to my science lead, who's going to be talking to you about what our youngsters do, showing you some of the youngsters, and just talking to you about what hopefully we're going to be able to do with our projects. So I hope that will give you just a flavour of the way that the school works.
Sounds tremendous, thank you.
Is that okay? As we said earlier, we're a special school, but we're really quite unique because we're nestled in the centre of Broadwater Farm Estate, and that in itself, for many people of my age and perhaps young at heart, they absolutely see that as being a place with a stigma attached, where there is a lot of difficulty and past history. And we would say that our school actually presents a beacon of hope, and it is an oasis in the middle of what frankly is a bit of a concrete jungle. We're an unusual school because we're not co-located with a mainstream school, we're actually integrated with a mainstream school. So the building is 8 years old now, pretty state of the art, and it was built to allow a special school and a mainstream school to coexist together in an inclusive environment. And I have to say that although I've been in special education for a very long time, this is the first such model that I've had the privilege to work in. Normally, sort of special schools tend to be sort of on the side, or they might be in the grounds of a mainstream school, but there isn't this sense that we will cohabit. So my children are on one side of the corridor in their classrooms, and the mainstream children are in the corridor in classrooms on the other side, which means that inclusion is something that we do quite naturally. We share lunch together, we actually walk around the corridor together, they play in the playground together when we're not in the middle of COVID. And that ability to explain to our mainstream youngsters that disability is not something to be frightened of, that yes, they might need to learn how to communicate with the youngsters a bit differently. They may not be able to play exactly the same games, but it makes the relationship between the two schools very unique. And we would say that it develops citizenship, and it really embeds British values in a way that perhaps isn't always easy if you're a school that's isolated from the viewpoint of just being a small special school. We have 121 children, and they're all primary aged, and they have a range of disability. We have predominantly children whose primary disability is ASD, and a variety of ways of expressing themselves. We have not that many youngsters who can talk. We have lots who can use symbols. They might use some Macatron signing, but we can't necessarily have conversations with probably 80 or 90% of our cohort. So the role of the staff at the school is really important, because we have to be our children's advocates, and we have to ensure that our therapists, such as our speech and language therapists, give those youngsters the means and the tools to express their needs and wants. They are an adorable group of children, because they all have their own personalities, and as I said earlier, they buck the trend a bit of what some of the research would say. They are very affectionate, we get lots of eye contact. They certainly have minds of their own, which is fabulous, because if they're determined, then it means they're going to be much more safe and secure and able to say no to things that are not right as they get older. Some of our children have got physical disability. We have some with hearing impairment and some with visual impairment. And all of our children have learning disability, because they would be in a mainstream school if that wasn't to be the case. So we feel very strongly that the fact that we are in an incredibly deprived area of London, some of your liverymen and freemen will know that because of where they live. We do have severe issues for our family of poverty, but the children come to school. They come every day. They are beautifully presented. Yeah, they get incredibly muddy and they get full of foam and lots of bubbles when they're having their sensory play, but they actually have a whale of a time at school, and they learn and they amaze us all the time. And I'd like to just show you our building a little bit, because I'm going to ask my children, just those few who are able to talk and who aren't camera shy, just to show you a teeny bit about our school.
Welcome to our school.
Our school is the Brook.
Our school is in London.
London is the capital of Great Britain.
And there's a lot of things to do and see in London.
Do you want to see a school?
Let's go!
Have you met our head teacher?
Welcome to the Brook. We do hope you enjoy your time with us. Come back and see us soon.
Hello, welcome, and nice to see you. My name's Maureen, and I'm the head teacher at the Brook, and I'm really lucky to be here. We share our building with our friends in the Willow School, and we are a lovely community where everybody has fun, everybody feels loved and appreciated and valued. My door is always open, and everyone's always welcome to come and share all the good things they're doing, to come and have a chat and to let me know how they feel. So welcome to the Brook. It's a place where we work really hard, but we also have a lot of fun. We're a family.
This is our reception.
We walk along the corridor.
This is the classroom. Let's have a look at our soft playroom.
This is our swimming pool. In the big hall we have PE and lunch. It's time to visit the music.
Let's go to the art room. This is the library. The cookery room. Let's go to the playground. Do you like the school?
Because we love it!
The end.
So that's just a view of some of our older children. There's a couple of classes. We have classes of about 8. And in the class we'll have one adult, one teacher, and we'll have 3 support assistants to support the children with their learning. So you can see that the level of needs they have for learning is high, because they need to have that sort of 2-to-1 opportunity. But you can also see how proud they are. They chose what they wanted to show you, and they thought it was really important you got to see the building in which they work every day. Obviously, for meeting the needs of those children, we have to have a bespoke curriculum. There's been a lot of changes, as you will know, in education. And so we devised a particular curriculum that we think actually meets the needs of our cohort, because they are changing. Our children are certainly becoming less verbal, far more challenging behaviour, and less able to communicate in the way that you've just seen. That most of that cohort will leave us, and it will be another 3 or 4 years before we would be able to have a group of youngsters at this stage who could do a presentation in quite that way. So if you don't mind, I'm going to pass you over to my deputy, Sakina, who's going to talk to you about the curriculum that we've devised called the Spiral Curriculum. And within that, obviously, science and the resources that you're enabling us to purchase fits very firmly in every aspect of that curriculum. So Sakina, my deputy.
My name's Sakina, and I'm lucky enough to be the deputy head here at the Brook School. I'm just going to share a screen with you to show you a visual of our spiral curriculum, and then I'll do just a very quick overview of it. Just while we're bringing up the screen, just to explain that in the Brook School we have 4 very different types of learners. We have, ranging in the school, learners who are completely just engaging at the moment. So they're working towards finding their realisation of the curriculum, exploration, anticipation, persistence and initiation. And then we have another group of learners, and they are extremely sensory. So they are ready to move on to subject-specific learning, but in a very exploratory way. So they're immersed in a particular subject area over the day and given opportunities to really play and have an early years approach to that. So we call it continuous provision, which is basically leaving out stations of work for the children to explore, to visit and revisit at their will. Then we have a group of students who we would call emerging, which means that they are beginning to be learners who are able to transfer the knowledge that they have into some skills. So particularly they would become emerging readers and emerging writers. So they'll be transferring their phonic knowledge into being able to read CVC words, very small sentences, maybe perhaps in the community with their parents they'd be reading signs, familiar signs around the community. And then we have our functional learners, and you saw quite a few of those on the video, and we would consider those to be our highest achieving and most cognitively able learners, in that they are doing subject-specific work continuously throughout the day. So in particular science, they would be learning very specific areas of the science curriculum, and of course with what you have provided us with, they will be using those resources to their fullest potential. So that's our 4 types of learners. Now, the reason that we call it a spiral curriculum is because not at any one time does anyone fit into one of those spirals. So, for instance, a child who is a functional learner may require some sensory input throughout the day to remain engaged in what they're doing. So the idea is that you would maybe say, yes, this is how they are as a learner, but we're giving you opportunities to regulate yourself throughout the day in order to break down the barriers to your learning. So we have children who potentially are non-verbal, who would find it very, very particularly difficult to focus on an activity, say for instance a reading activity or phonics activity, but they may be very talented in art or creative subject areas. So what we would say was, for them, they are a functional learner when they are within a topic or an area of study that they are excelling in. So we never say that there's just gifted and talented pupils right at the top end of our school. We say that we have gifted and talented pupils throughout the school within every single spiral. So we work very closely with the teachers, and the teachers work very closely with their teams to understand child development in order to know when to stretch and challenge a child and make them a functional learner, but to give them all of the scaffolding in the other spirals in order to attain the best progress they can. So if you have a look at the actual spiral itself, it clearly sets out, it's clockwise, by the way, so it clearly sets out the sort of destination for a child, so that you work through those spirals, and that everything in this is underpinned by an EYFS approach. So that's an early years foundation stage approach, which is the continuous provision that I've just spoken about. The 5 areas of engagement, of course, they're not hierarchical, but we would suggest that, you know, we would work on them in a very systematic way in order to get the best out of the child, in the sense that the exploration is the first thing that we would introduce, and that is, again, is done through continuous provision. So all of the children will, again, this is how they're gaining so much from the resources that you've given us, and, you know, Jessica will make sure that they are used in that way to give an exploration to those very sensory learners, where, like I said, the functional learners will be using them in a very functional way and transferring that skill into the science curriculum and the national curriculum, for which Jessica writes all of the streams of work. So we're really happy to have your resources, and I want to thank you very much for that. And I know that Jessica's really excited to be using those going forward. So I hope I give you a little bit of an overview of what we do here at the Brook. And now I'm going to pass on to Jessica.
Thank you very much.
Hello everyone. I'm just going to see if they can stop sharing the screen so you can see me maybe a little bit better. There we go. Okay, so let me just do a quick recap. My name's Jessica Burke, and I've been working at the Brook now for a couple of years, and I'm currently leading the science team here. Now, I'm working with one of these sensory groups, which means that my children, even though predominantly are year 6 pupils, my children that I'm in my class of 8, 5 of them are year 6, but they're academic level, you are looking, just so you can get an idea, you're looking at around about, some of them are working around the 6-month age, and the highest person in my class is about at the age of a 3-year-old. So you get an idea of where they are, you know, the sort of children we have is a cohort. Now, I would say mine is probably one of the lowest functioning classes, but they are very much in this exploratory stage in learning about themselves and their development. Now, so when I became the science lead in this school, science was a new area for me. So I got in contact with the Primary Teaching Trust, and they put me in contact with a lovely lady called Calvinda Jonel, and she had come and help support me write the best science curriculum to meet the needs of our children, ensuring that we covered all the areas of the national curriculum. So we're covering all the topics that we need. And she basically helped mentor me in particular, to make this, and working with Sue Keenan and the other team within the school to make this the best curriculum we could for our children at all levels, from those who are functioning to those who are sensory, covering all that spiral learning and in between. Now, as you are probably all aware, science is a very practical lesson, and this is one of the areas I'm so pleased to be able to be involved in, because it helps the children. It means that they're able to engage. The children's brains, all children, our brains are hardwired for exploration and observation, and 2 things that just so happen to be these very, very early science skills. And therefore it's accessible to everybody, all the pupils at the Brook, regardless of where they are academically. Now, once pupils' critical thinking skills and they have the fine motor skills are developed, they can start using the simple tools, for example, magnifying glasses, to help kids see things they've probably never seen before in a way they've not done. For instance, an insect very close up. It opens up a whole new world to them, which they find pretty amazing. And it is, and you see the children when all of a sudden, you know, I'm going to show you a video in a minute of a child who, we were looking at bugs, then all of a sudden he realised his hand was enlarged using the magnifying glass. He totally forgot about looking at the bugs and was just so observant of what was going on with his hand. He's like, oh my gosh, my hand's bigger. and it's just so lovely to see. So I'm going to run a little video for you. I'm so sorry there is no sound on this. That's a technical hitch from my part, and also I have to apologise because I haven't got permission from all my pupils, so you will find a little decorative leaf or a little thing covering their faces, but I thought it was so lovely for you to see them. Now, some of these are with my children in my class and also some other children in other classes. So if I could ask Maureen very kindly to run the bug hunt video, that would be fabulous.
Don't you think more like Cookery Room?
How about over there? That could possibly be.
Oh, there might be ants. Yeah, maybe. Might see some ants. Yeah.
At least it's
he's making money and rich.
And also,
that with children animals.
And also making people realize that it's Wait there. What is that? Never mind, false alarm. False alarm.
Any lock? Why is all off not getting locked?
There's a lamp button. The stalker behind us.
I think all of them are
All of them are dead.
We were outside and then children brought the stuff from outside inside as well, which was lovely. Another simple yet effective resource we use for science is mirrors. Now, playing with mirrors help support a children's healthy development of learning. It helps them develop their visual senses. Playing with the mirror can help also develop their language skills. Even before they can use words, they can look at themselves in the mirror and point to their eyes, to their nose, to their mouths. And basically, you'll see if you give a child a mirror, we find that so many of them are trying to make sounds using the mirror. Also, mirrors are used for a variety of other areas within the school curriculum. For example, the personal, social, health and economic mirror play, where we nurture a child's development of their own self-awareness, which is a key part to their overall social and emotional development. For example, we can encourage people to look at their reflection and explore their faces and how they're feeling. Like, can you make me a happy face? Look happy, and show them that way, and they can see their faces being happy. And also, as I said before, they learn to make sounds. And again, we use mirrors an awful lot when trying to teach children phonics, you know, to make that sound, they need to make that shape, and using that mirror to help them see if they're making the same shape as the teacher is another way that mirrors are used within our school. And as I said, to see if they can recognize different body parts from looking in the mirror. Can they point to their nose? Can they point to their ears and their eyes and things like that? So I'm going to show you another video, and this is going to be about seeing children using their mirrors within the classroom. again, just looking at the pictures, looking at their faces and reflections within the mirror. And they make us smile. Do they recognise who's in the mirror? That shouldn't be there. I'm sorry, I just realised there's a problem. Okay, so that's just having the children look at the mirrors and see and explore within themselves. So all I was going to say is that we within the school are looking to use the funding to help with the use the funding to help buy more resources, particularly mirrors and things like that, to dress up some of the outdoor areas that we have, including this. We have some terraces, and so we want to put some long mirrors in there, so when the children are outside, they can actually see themselves and continue the learning which we do in the classroom, also in outside in the outdoor learning area, and also help get some more things that we can do for when they're doing their exploratory on their own to help support our forest school, which we have on site. So bug collectors and poodle bugs, where children who are brave enough can suck up the bugs and put them into these little containers and things like that. And hopefully your funding, we will be able to go out and buy some of this stuff with the money that you are donating. And I really just need to say thank you so much for choosing us. Your funding will make a tremendous difference to each and every pupil within the school. And I just want to say thank you for giving us this opportunity to help support our children even further.
Fantastic. My goodness me. I think everybody's almost speechless. It's absolutely wonderful. I think whenever one goes to a special school, I think you just realise the challenges that the children have, but also that you have as the teachers to try and actually allow them to achieve what they can achieve, and that's the important thing. One of my questions was going to be, how did you hear about us? And then of course you said the magic words Kulvinda. The long arms of Kulvinda Johal reach to Haringey, so we will be having, or I will be writing to her to thank her for talking to you. And that's a very important point, actually. We do quite a lot of work in Islington. I'm not too far away from you. We obviously are keen to spread the word as much as we can about what this organisation does. We're not, you perhaps do know something about livery companies because of your proximity.
I'm part of the Worshipful Company of Educators.
You're an educator. How wonderful. Well, in which case then...
I'm waiting to get freedom of the city, but guess what? COVID got in the way.
Oh, well, yeah, unfortunately that happened with a lot of people. We have a drove of people, as the clerk will tell you, that are waiting to get their freedoms, and with Guildhall being closed, it's so frustrating. But fantastic. In that case, it's very rare, I have to tell you, Maureen, that we don't have to explain what on earth a livery company is. And if you go, I mean, even in London, I'm bound to say, but there we are. Anyway, that's not necessary. We're not one of the wealthy ones, I hasten to add, so there's plenty of others you can approach to consider perhaps to get some other help. But we're delighted. It really is so good. I don't know whether there are any questions from any of our assembled throng for you. Yep, sorry, somebody said yes.
Yes, me.
Maria, hi.
Are you a relatively new school in that I don't recall you being there about sort of 20 odd years ago when I used to work in the area?
No.
It was 8.
What it is, Maria, is we were an amalgamation of two schools. So we had it was the Moselle was one of them.
Yes.
So there were two special schools and William Harvey.
Yeah.
So they amalgamated to become the Brook School, and then a primary school sort of disappeared off, I think it was near the Moselle site, and then they came together. So you're absolutely right. We haven't been around the origins, and a lot of my staff were with the original, but as a school, we've only been together as this inclusive for 8 years. So you're absolutely right. We're new in that way, but the roots go way, way back.
No, it's the only school I knew on the estate was Northumberland Park, as was. So it's good to see a school like yours there.
May I ask a question, please? I was really interested. I've done quite a lot of work through Riding for the Disabled with many children with learning difficulties, and you clearly have got them wonderfully well engaged in what they're doing, and I do congratulate you. I would like to know how you actually select the children, or how the children are selected to come to your school in the first place, because I'm sure there are many, many children that are not being, unfortunately are not having such a good time.
Because we're a state and maintained school, we actually don't get a great deal of choice in the youngsters who come. Primarily, they need to be within the borough of Haringey. That's the first sort of criteria, and they must all have an education, health and care plan. And what happens is that we have a certain cohort that we are able to admit every year. And it's been quite interesting because we were a very top-heavy school in that the majority of our children were the older children, but I'm losing 22 of those at the end of this year. So my school is going to become bottom-heavy because I'm going to have lots and lots of littlies coming through the door. And what happens is that we are sent consultation papers from the borough, and if they come from the borough, they are really saying, A, we think these children need to be in a special school, and B, we are giving you the permission to accept them if you think you can meet their needs, because they're saying they will fund them. But you're quite right, it can be incredibly difficult because the waiting list for any form of special school is very, very long. And if a child leaves in the middle of the year, then we do tend to have a little bit more choice, simply because we have to make sure that the youngster coming in fits appropriately within the cohort. Because there's only 7 or 8 children in each of the classes, then the dynamics between those are really quite carefully crafted. So if a child were to leave, and we've had some migration away from London because of COVID, so we have had a couple of in-year placements, but we then tend to look at 3 or 4 children that the borough flag up as being really important to come to us, who perhaps are really struggling in mainstream. And we will have those children in for a visit to see if we can meet the needs, but at that stage to see whether they will fit within the cohort, because if we cannot give them an appropriate class place at that point, then actually it can be very detrimental. If we're putting them somewhere where they're perhaps an emerging or functional learner, but they'd have to go into a sensory class, then that actually wouldn't be in their best interest at that point. So the in-year, we get a little bit more choice, but the rest of the time, it's really a case of how can we ensure that we have the right cohort. And we do try and actually get girls, because as you'll know, especially with ASD, the diagnosis for girls is way down in comparison with boys. So we are a very male-dominated school. So that means we do things like girls' groups. And so if it were to be potentially the opportunity for us to take some girls, then we would take them simply because we think it's good for the cohort, for the whole of the school to actually have that sort of both boys and girls.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question, please? When the children leave you, do they have to go out of the locale to go to another school, or do they stay locally?
We're very lucky, actually, because the way that Haringey works, we're quite unusual as a borough, actually, because a lot of special schools now are all through. My previous existence in 2 special schools was that they were 5 to 19. So you actually kept the children within the same environment over a period of time. And when I had the opportunity to come and work here, I was quite uncertain about what would that mean, because as I say, I've been used to having the children transitioning into secondary in the same type of establishment. The way that Haringey works is that it actually has very distinct areas. So our children will go to one of 3 special schools in Haringey if they're within borough, the Vale, the Grove, which is a free school, or Riverside. all of which are geared particularly to secondary. The Grove and Vale have separate areas. The Vale has a secondary building and a primary building, so there's a real sense of them transitioning to a different part of the school. But Riverside is exactly like us, only for secondary. So they have only children who are secondary children. So they don't have to go out of the borough. And I think that makes transition so much easier, especially for parents, because we have such a good relationship with those feeders, with those schools that we feed into, that we can ensure that we do bespoke transition. We meet with the class teachers, we tell them what's not on the paper, you know, the paperwork, because sometimes we read paperwork and we see the child and we're not sure how those two things match, because the skills and the strengths of the youngster may not be captured. But also our children have very strong likes and dislikes, and there are times when actually some of that strategy can really help with transition. If they particularly like to have bubbles at 11 o'clock in the morning, well, to be honest, that might not be on one of the plans. But if the teacher says, when he's getting close to snack time, he'll be getting really hungry, and we found the way to deal with that is to use bubbles, then the teacher instantly can give them a familiarity, even though they're in a new environment. So being able to do that transition in such a close proximity, the same transport, quite often they get similar escorts to help them get to school, and all of that helps with what is a very traumatic experience for our children. They do like being with us, and we are very sad to see them go, but we're really pleased to push them out the nest too, because actually one of the things we feel we have to do with our youngsters is teach them to live in the world outside. You know, we're a lovely, protected, safe environment, and that's as it should be, but we have to support them in a safe and secure way to cope with some of the challenges that life brings, and transition and change is one of those. So for us, being able to help them to leave us and to move on to secondary, I think is actually a really positive step for them. And it's wonderful when they come back and see us. Most of them have grown, they're about 6'5", and you just think, wow. And they've become really responsible men and women. None of them have quite become liveried men yet, but who knows? In the future, that's every possibility.
I am
And also the
absolutely
transition.
in awe. I'm in awe of what you do. Thank you very much.
Well, of course, as you've heard, we're very lucky to have a very unique young freeman as well. Very, very important. Sorry, young liveryman in the shape of Tony and Pam's son. So, Jamie, it's brilliant. Absolutely wonderful. Any more for any more?
Could I do you have a supportive team of governors, and do you have difficulty in recruiting governors?
That's what I was going to ask you.
Maureen, you're on mute.
I'm going to ask Jessica to answer that because she actually is a governor.
Oh, God.
Okay, so we're obviously, as Maureen said, we were a part of the team at Willow, so we've called we've got a governing body to cover both our mainstream school and our special needs school. So yeah, we do have a board of governors. It's very difficult. People are not that willing, to be honest, to come and join us. And I think because it is a commitment, it's not something that you can just say, oh yeah, I'll be on the board of governors just to find out what's going on. We need people to support it properly and appropriately. So we are looking for, I believe the chairperson is one of the people who might be considering to step down and things like that. So yes, we do have a wonderful team, but unfortunately, like most things, I do think we're always looking for more.
And I think, I mean, the role of the governors is so significant as well. And I think it's actually quite a challenge for our governors, because they may have had experience of youngsters going to mainstream, but they may not have had experience of special needs. And they're having to look at the dilemmas and the tensions that exist. And also, because we're sharing a building, we have to look at how we share the costs. So from that viewpoint, it's probably one of the most complex types of board of governors that you would expect. But I have to say we're extraordinarily lucky because the commitment we do have from those members, and the challenge the whole point of governors is, you know, I don't want as a head teacher to have a group of yes men and women. I've got to have people that make me accountable and that actually question what I do all the time, because that's the only way we can actually move things forward. And I'm very lucky because they're remarkably supportive, but they're also very robust. And I think that's absolutely what's necessary.
Very good. Tony, did you have any further questions, or was that the same question as the Masters?
It was almost the same question as the Masters.
Aha.
Well, in as much as, do you have parent governors? Because I know that, you know, having special needs children is an extremely wearing and you know, exhausting. It's not an occupation, but it's an exhausting fact. I know Pam was a parent governor down at Maze Hill School, and but it's not easy to find them. Do you get a lot of support from your parents, or do you find that, sadly, a lot of them say, right, he's at school, I can go on with my life until he comes home again?
I think that's quite a difficult one to answer, because I think our parents and our families are as unique as each other. I think our parents are extraordinarily supportive of us, but I also think we have to acknowledge that many of them do live in poverty. I mean, sometimes the state of their housing is just heartbreaking. We have families that are in overcrowded with mould all over the place, without some of our children with asthma. So, you know, I think it's quite difficult for some of our parents to feel as though they can come and be supporters. They will. We've got Comic Relief on Friday, and most of our children will come in having a wonderful time dressed in red, and we've asked for a 20p donation, and we will be supported because that's something they can do to support. But I think, you know, perhaps we don't get the level of support that we might. It tends to work the other way. We tend to be the ones that need to do the support because we know how to tap into certain things. We can write the letters of support if our families need to have, you know, make appeals to housing to see if someone would come and deal with the rodents and would actually deal with the damp. I think it's a nice reciprocal relationship. And, you know, I have a family liaison officer that we've appointed in the last couple of years, and she is invaluable because she's the go-between. I think sometimes I think I'm a bit scary. I can't think why, because I think I'm sweetness and light. But there's this, you know what it's like with authority figures. They come into my office and we give them tea and biscuits, but there's still that sense somehow of I'm a bit official. Whereas my family support worker, they can go and tell her things, and they really get a level of support. And I think for us, that role has been invaluable in forging that collaborative partnership. And we know our parents. We're lucky. We have 121 families and we know them intimately. My class teachers know their families intimately, and all of that helps because it means we can understand why sometimes behaviours are escalating, why sometimes the youngsters aren't wearing clean clothes because they've been smearing or thrashing the house or what have you. And I think that level of empathy that we have allows us to meet the needs of both the family and the children in a way that's appropriate without us falling into the trap of becoming social workers, because that would be very easy to do, and to go down that aspect rather than remember that actually our job is to do teaching and learning primarily, but to give those youngsters a holistic experience. And what I said in that little video, we are a family, and we stand by that. And sometimes families fall out, and that's okay too, because then we make up and we improve and we make sure that we do things better and better every time.
I will like to confirm with Maureen, I mean, the amount of work we do with the family, we're not just teachers here. We work together with the families, whether it's to support the children or to support the parents themselves. That is such a massive part of our jobs as teachers, and also, as I said, with the family liaison officer, And then, of course, the SLT, the amount of work we've done, especially during lockdown. I had parents who weren't comfortable that children had many medical needs, so wasn't able to attend. I had 2 parents who their child wasn't able to attend because of the risk they had. And helping them to support the children at home was incredible. And it wasn't just me, it was throughout the whole school. The amount of work we did as teachers to make sure that the parents were okay and coping, as well as the children were doing their learning as well, was invaluable. It really is, and I don't think you can emphasise the family nature of our school.
Yeah. I asked the question, and I thought that would probably be your answer, but I thought I would like to ask the question just to bring it out into the open for any that perhaps were not as familiar with special needs schools as we are. And I congratulate you. Well done. Thank you.
Before we go, can I ask, with the lockdown, it's been very, very difficult for families. Do they have respite care at all to sort of encourage moving on out of the home now?
They're much younger. They're much younger.
It's just starting. It depended very much. I mean, we found that some of my staff actually do respite for the children, and they continued when they were allowed to continue to meet the needs of the children. And Haringey have allowed us to have a holiday club over Easter, which means that we're going to be able to have as many of our children in who want to come for 4 days, and they will get an action-packed opportunity to be away from home. But I think some of the sort of overnight care did not happen, and some carers, if they were agency, did not come. And I think you're absolutely right, that caused enormous pressure for parents, because they didn't have that respite at weekends, which sometimes means that they can spend time with the other siblings, who often can get sort of marginalised because their needs aren't as obviously challenging as some of our youngsters are.
I had 3 children under 5, and James was my middle one. And when he was at school, one of his teachers used to take him home weekends to a house, which was absolutely wonderful. And I can't ever thank her enough, because it gave me the respite that I needed to be able to do my other 2 children. So it's a fantastic thing to do. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
That clock striking in the background makes me
mine.
The time has come.
Sorry.
All proceedings to a close, I think, we're now. Maureen, Sukina and Jessica, thank you so much. That was a profoundly moving experience. Your dedication and enthusiasm of each and every one of you really shines through. And how you manage to so sensitively and intuitively match your teaching and care of children of different ages with a wide range of needs, and all sort of changing, a kaleidoscope almost, is so impressive. It is really cheering and heartening to realize that such wonderful work is going on with our disadvantaged children. And lovely to see them wandering around with mirrors and magnifying glasses, exploring everywhere and helping develop them. And we are so proud as glass sellers to be associated with your wonderful efforts. And I hope that the little offering we make will be of great help to you. We look forward to, we hope to keep in touch with you. Let us know what's going on and come back for more.
Oh, we will. I would
you.
like to say, if you don't mind me interrupting quickly, I'm sure Maureen would agree, once lockdown is over, we would love to have you. We will do a presentation for you with what we're doing with the money, but it would be lovely if you would like to come and do a visit and come and see our pupils and see our school. As soon as this is over, it would be lovely to have you.
Yes, please, that would be fab.
That's really nice. Thank you so much.
That would be tremendous. And by the way, just in closing, Maureen, all head teachers are scary. So that's it's just one of those things. So anyway, Master, thank you so much. Thanks everybody. Special is a new word in my vocabulary. You are very. Thank you.
The only thing I would say before we say goodbye, I would be grateful if you'd send me all 3 of those videos. The first one didn't come over very well, but I'll integrate it into the recording so that it actually shows much, much better. And we'll be in touch further going forward. But all of you have a splendid rest of day, and thank you so much for your contributions.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.